Their mail, as I mentioned in an earlier talk, was no longer read. Their mail used to be read by their superiors. It was no longer read. Their tonsures, their haircuts were optional. His books did no longer have to have the imprimatur of his superiors. He had a record player in the Hermitage, and he would play Bob Dylan and John Coltrane records. Joan Baez even came to visit. So there were also changes in the liturgy, transitioning from Latin to English, and Merton had a hand, as I said, in all these changes. He was consulted about monastic renewal. He wrote articles about it and things like that. In 1968, the abbot, who had been elected in the 1940s, retired, and a new abbot was elected. James Fox had been the abbot for approximately 20 years, and Merton, they didn't always see eye to eye. Often in the journals, Merton would grouse, complain about James Abbott Fox, and then he would come back a few days later and say, "Yeah, but I really need him," and because Merton was an enthusiastic person and had his own issues, but he did not see eye to eye politically with the abbot, nor within their spirituality. James Fox, the abbot, had a saying that went like this, that he was fond of quoting: "All for Jesus, through Mary, with a smile." I think Merton found that sort of precious, sentimental spirituality grating on him. But he did recognize his own need, and he did respect James Fox, even though he does complain about him often. But he did respect him in the end. But a new abbot was elected and allowed Merton to travel to New Mexico to visit a monastic community there called Christ in the Desert, or Christ of the Desert. This new abbot allowed Merton to go to Alaska and California to lead a series of workshops and retreats. And in the fall, he was allowed to attend a conference in Bangkok, Thailand. And when you're reading the last volume, at least when I'm reading the last volume of this, he makes mention of it like in February. He's going, "I got invited to go to this conference in Bangkok, Thailand." You're going to go, "No, don't go. Bad things are going to happen." But he went. He did go. And before he got there, he visited a variety of Hindu and Buddhist scholars and religious leaders in Asia. As I mentioned before, he visited with the Dalai Lama a couple of times. And then he went to this conference where he died on December 10th, 1968. There is some speculation whether he would have actually returned to Gethsemane, been a monk there. He was already making plans to stop and make visits in Europe before he returned to the States. He liked to travel, even though he liked the traveling lifestyle. But life for him at Gethsemane had become difficult. He enjoyed a certain amount of fame within the church, and particularly in the peace movement, and he was subjected to unannounced visitors. In his journal, he mentions hiding from a group of priests who showed up at the Hermitage. And then another time he notes losing his temper at some unauthorized folks showing up while he was sitting on the porch of the Hermitage in his underwear. So in his correspondence, he would never say whether or not he would return to Gethsemane, but he would always, not always, but he would say, "I will always be a monk of Gethsemane." Kind of left the door open for perhaps finding some more solitude in California, Alaska, or someplace like that. Well, that concludes this talk and this Lenten journey with Thomas Merton. I was not at all able to accomplish all that I thought I could in the beginning. It was just way too much. The man was prodigious in his output. I mean, I got a few books here. Y'all saw the slide on the first one. There's a shelf like this, and there's books over here. I don't know when there is. And literary essays, and a big giant book of his collected poetry. I mean, he was just prolific, and there was just so much there. I couldn't nearly cover it at all. So we've only scratched the surface. But I hope to introduce you to a few of his ideas. I think the main ones being about God being not a thing, but a living reality within us, and as he would say, who has a center everywhere, whose center is nowhere, whose circumference is everywhere. And so this idea that God is a present reality in life, not up there, but in here. And when we get in touch with the God in us, then we will find our true self. So hopefully I've whetted your appetite to read a few of his books. I mentioned those ones at the beginning, and I just appreciate you being here and being attentive and being interested in this. Merton has accompanied me on my a journey, and I hope you might find him a companion on yours. So thank you.